And with a happy album display piece and happy sounds inside, you can't go wrong with the Beach Boys' Smile. We're sure to sell 1 million units in January. Well, that didn't quite happen. And instead, 57 years ago, we got Smiley Smile instead, which did not sell 1 million units, but certainly does have its fans and is a very fun and unique Beach Boys album. Welcome back, friends, for another episode of Betamax Blocker, and this is actually a much belated follow-up to a video I did last fall on the digital set Live Sunshine 1967. So I have a whole giant deep dive video on the various concerts that are included here, and this digital set was more to recognize the tours that promoted Smiley Smile. In this case, only one actual concert stop. That was in Hawaii. I have a whole video on that. You can check it out. And of course, their new album at the time, Wild Honey. And this is a really cool set, but it's not the only piece of this 1967 puzzle. Indeed, if you were a Beach Boys collector in 2017, you might have remembered in summer of that year, we got Sunshine Tomorrow, a 2-CD set that celebrated Wild Honey with a new stereo remix, celebrated Smiley Smile with some sessions. It was the first time a complete, or at least mostly complete, Lei'd in Hawaii album was released. A really fun set. And I thought, as kind of a teaser to this set, because I really do need to review it, as kind of a teaser, we'd cover the other digital release. So there was one, the big live collection here, and the other, Sunshine Tomorrow 2, the studio sessions. So a short collection, in fact there's only 29 tracks on it, that covers material from Smiley Smile, from Wild Honey, and other aspects of 1967, stuff that didn't quite make the cut onto this CD, and then a review of this CD, a deep dive into what's on it, will be forthcoming. So, if you don't collect the digital sets, that's okay. You can still hear about some of the interesting pieces and parts that were available there. And if you do, please share your thoughts on this digital set below. So let's talk about the contents of this, and I want to talk a little bit about track sequencing. This CD is pretty well sequenced. Wild Honey's together, Lei'd in Hawaii's together. Most things are grouped. There are a few kind of hard right turns here and there. You know, Surf's Up kind of flies in out of nowhere. But for the most part, it's pretty well organized. The live collection goes chronologically, which is the right way to do things. And it's kind of interesting to see which songs stayed in the live set or which ones were replaced, which Wild Honey songs were popular with audiences and which ones weren't. And I have to say, maybe of the three of them, this is sequenced even better because it's sequenced kind of by project and also sort of by the, shall we say, level of content available for each song. We'll get into that in a little bit too. So we start off with our Smiley Smile sessions here. Hold up Smiley Smile again for you. We start off with the acapella mix of Heroes and Villains. This is the version used on Smiley Smile. We got the instrumental version on the CD. So now we have the acapella version to accompany that. Remember, there are lots of Heroes and Villains, you know, acapellas, instrumentals, experiments, things like that, all available, but those are all for the Smile version. This is for the Smiley Smile version, so it is unique. It is a pretty interesting listen, a good start to the set. We have the track and backing vocals of Vegetables. A lot of the track and backing vocals, bits of material on this album feature things like count-ins or brief sessions, so they run a little bit longer than the actual songs might. You know, that's the reason why they have a little extra studio stuff on there. But this is a really nice backing vocal bit. It actually reminds me a lot of the backing vocal montage on Smile. It even has one of my favorite Beach Boys kind of harmony moments, the ooh that they do during Vegetables. Really nice stuff. So again, the Smiley Smile version, but definitely has some Smile DNA still in it. It makes for a fun listen. She's Going Bald. Next up, we have the track and the backing vocals. We had no She's Going Bald material on here. She's Going Bald had started as He Gives Speeches for Smile, but there weren't really a lot of things recorded. It seems like something that was dropped relatively early on. So it's nice to have it here. She's Going Bald. I said this in my video with Steve Lewis. I'll say it again. To me, the weirdest thing on Smiley Smile. you know, the distorted vocals and stuff, which are all present here as they're in the backing vocal mix. Little too freaky for me. Another one that we didn't get any previous session material for was Little Pad. So next up on this set we have the acapella Little Pad. I talked about Little Pad in my Beach Boys in Hawaii video. Took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize that Little Pad is the theme song to The Whitest Kids You Know. That took me years to figure out. I feel very stupid about that. Pretty cool to have. Follow that up with Me Tonight session highlights. We've actually had quite a bit of With Me Tonight material on various sets, on Hawthorne, California, on Smile stuff, on this release. Here it's a session, it's mostly the on and on she goes dum-be-doo-ba part like that. They're really just practicing it again and again. Nice to have it, but it's also something we have quite a bit of material for already. We have Gettin' Hungry, track and backing vocals. We had a live version of Gettin' Hungry here, but nothing else, so it's nice to have the instrumental with the vocals on it there. The organ intro goes really hard. It's one of my favorite musical moments from Smiley Smile. It's pretty crazy. Not everyone likes it. I get that. Interestingly, Gettin' Hungry was released as a single, but only credited to Mike Love and Brian Wilson, which I think is the reason maybe why it wasn't as successful, because, you know, it should have just been the Beach Boys, that kind of thing. I'm not sure why that was done, if it was a contractual thing or who knows what. And last from our Smiley Smile section, track number 8, we have Whistle In, track and backing vocals. We've had some whistle in sessions before, usually called All Day and All Night, you know, kind of an early version, figuring it out or figuring out how to adapt it to a live, you know, performance, things along those lines. But here we get just track and backing vocals, and it does sound pretty cool. It's the Smiley Smile version all the way, and there's a little bit of a session on there too, but pretty fun stuff. That actually concludes our Smiley Smile section, so we move to our next bit, which is for Wild Honey. Here's my side 8-track. We start off with Aren't You Glad, a stereo single mix. Aren't You Glad was never released as a single, but it was mixed for one, I guess in the event that they did decide to release it. Or at least as far as I know, it never was released as a single. But Aren't You Glad, wearing my Aren't You Glad t-shirt today. Really fun song. I like this single mix too. It's really punchy. I think like they mixed up the horns and a few things to kind of give it a little extra power there. That would also be in their live set briefly in the late 60s and 70s. I Was Made to Love Her, track and backing vocals. So there's Stevie Wonder cover, I Was Made to Love Her. This is only a fragment of the track and backing vocals on this digital release. They didn't do the whole song, maybe they thought it was too repetitive. So keep in mind, if you really like that song, you're not actually getting the full thing. You get most of the important parts though. Country Air, track and backing vocals. We didn't get sessions or things like that for Country Air on this set, so it's nice to have these. Pretty good stuff. It was a song they considered for their live set, one of the ones that didn't really hang around. It's actually longer than the actual song is due to like additional session material. We have Darlin', track and backing vocals. Darlin' is interesting because we already have the full instrumental track widely available. It was released on Stacko Tracks. I have a whole video on Stacko Tracks, you can check that out. We got a session instrumental here, so them, you know, practicing the instruments, putting things together. And then we get track and backing vocals. My question is, why not a Darlin' a cappella? You know, we've had so much with the instrumentation of it. What about these beautiful vocals? I don't know. It's a weird addition, and I think one of the few missteps this digital set has, because with Darlin' you really could have used something more interesting, something more unique instead of more instrumental. I mean, it's a great instrumental, don't get me wrong, but we needed something more. I Love Just Wants to See You, one of the dirty songs on Wild Honey there, or probably the dirtiest one actually. How She Boogalooed It's a little bit dirty. But this one is interesting. The track and backing vocals go more with the alternate take that we're given here. You can hear all the weird things the Beach Boys are saying in the background. At one point Brian chides the others and says, "Don't laugh," that kind of thing. It's a weird inclusion, a little bit different, and like I said, I don't know why they used more of the alternate stuff instead of the proper Wild Honey version. Here Comes the Night and Let the Wind Blow get acapellas. Here Comes the Night, not the disco one, the Wild Honey one. Of course, we don't have any sessions or anything for that, so it's really nice to have the acapella here, and it sounds great. Let the Wind Blow is one of those songs from Wild Honey that was remixed very early on. Here it is back in 2001, already mixed for stereo. And we had some session material here. Really nice to just get the a cappella. Makes for a good complement to the rest. You could tell this is a song that the people involved in choosing and remixing tracks really liked, really cared about. And you know, it's nice to get the vocals only version here. And we end the Wild Honey segment with How She Boogalooed. So this is weird. We get the backing track and the last verse, which is remixed in stereo. Now the Beach Boys have done these kind of weird partial instrumental, partial vocal things before. In fact, Sail on Sailor on the Hawthorne, California set has the lyrics come in at the end. There's the partial vocal version of Good Vibrations where the lead vocal drops in and out, that kind of thing. So it's not unheard of, but this is even weirder yet because they actually add a session take, you know, when they started to play and then stopped onto the beginning. So we get like a false start, we get most of the song instrumentally, and then we get the last verse. It's really odd. I think they didn't quite know what to do with How She Boogalooed. They released a live version on this release, but they hadn't really given us like sessions or anything. I've always liked How She Boogalooed. I actually sang that backstage once with a roadie at a Brian Wilson concert. It's really fun. Alright, then we get to stuff that we've seen before, but these are like new or expanded takes. So they kind of grouped the songs that were maybe not quite finished songs together. We start off with Lonely Days. We've seen Lonely Days in a couple places, like Hawthorne, California, and the Sunshine Tomorrow CD. Lonely Days is a mostly finished kind of song, that kind of thing. It was really exciting to see it here on Hawthorne, California because it had never been released before, but it's not a finished product. You know, it has elements of it. This is actually the... Whoops. This is actually about 3 minutes or so, but the thing of it is, this one is almost more of just like a practice for the instrumentals. It doesn't really have, you know, finished elements to it. Kind of a disappointment there. You know, Lonely Days, I think, was close to reaching some kind of finished point, but that just didn't happen. Alright, after that we have Time to Get Alone. Time to Get Alone is really interesting because the group started it for Wild Honey. They considered it and worked on it for Friends. You can find Friends-related material on this set. And they finally released it on 2020. And again, you can find some material for Time to Get Alone there. This release uses the... lost my notes there. Uses the backing track for the 3-minute, 15-second version of it. So one of the alternate takes, just the backing track. Still pretty interesting to have. And then lastly, we have Cool Cool Water. Now Cool Cool Water began in the Smile days, and there were many different versions of it. It was eventually released on an album and as a single in 1970. 2 different versions, one as the closer to Sunflower, the other as the 45. But here we get a 1967 Wild Honey era take. Really the only thing of note is that this seems to be when they started adding in the water, 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 water intro. That kind of thing. That doesn't seem to have been a thing during the Smile days. They focus more on like the drip, drop parts there. So interesting stuff. And then we get to something that isn't really a song, but we can still find plenty of different versions of. Can't Wait Too Long, also known as Been Way Too Long. So here we get a version that runs about 2 minutes and 38 seconds. It's kind of the inverse of the one released here, where we start out with the vocals and then it kind of loses the vocals and just does an instrumental the rest of the time, focusing on the instrumental tag. Pretty interesting stuff. We have all kinds of sessions that float around for that. Probably the most comprehensive being released here on I Can Hear Music. Someday I'll do a review of I Can Hear Music. Alright, then we have 2 things that are, I guess you could say, new songs, but they're not really songs. We have Tune L, not to be confused with Tune X from Smile, completely different. Tune L is just kind of like a jam with guitar and drums. It's pretty funky, it has like a 1970s vibe to it. I don't know if it was maybe the very early version of something they would be working on later, excuse me, but I don't know. It doesn't go anywhere really. It's a fun session though. And then we have the outtake Good News, which is kind of like a folk song. It's like a strummed guitar. It's really hard to understand the lyrics though. I have a feeling, again, this was just kind of a ditty that someone was working on. It seems a lot like something Al Jardine would have done. This little ditty just kind of put together. So that's really it we have for like new, unheard Beach Boys archival material. Then we get to Lei'd in Hawaii. So all kinds of stuff from Lei'd in Hawaii was released throughout the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the early 2010s, so we finally got basically the whole thing here. So there's a few Lei'd in Hawaii outtakes though. We have an instrumental version of Surfin'. And this is interesting to hear because here's where they were working on Do It Again and kind of moving Surfin' in that direction. We get the do-do-do-do-do-do-do bit, all that kind of stuff is there. Great to hear it instrumentally. There's still a few instances too where the group sings Surfin' and that kind of thing. They still use the lyrics a little bit to help guide the song. We get a Lei'd in Hawaii version of Heroes and Villains. Heroes and Villains was done live in Hawaii, so it makes sense they'd bring it to studio, but it's not the full song. They actually cut off the beginning, they kind of start in the middle. Maybe they weren't planning on really using that song for their Lei'd in Hawaii album. They were just kind of experimenting with it, so not really a lot to say there. With a little help from my friends, track and backing vocals, we get some fun sessions, Brian telling everybody to relax. It opens with someone making like weird laughter, almost like monkey kind of sounds. With a little help from my friends was one of the first Lei'd in Hawaii things to be released. That was on the Rarities album. So we've already had it there. It popped up on the cover by the Beach Boys CD. Good to finally have a version here that's different. We have kind of a take with just the instruments and the backing vocals. The group does a pretty good job on it. We have one of my favorites from the set, Barbara Ann instrumental. We don't have an instrumental of Barbara Ann from the party sessions, so it's nice to have an instrumental here. It goes pretty hard. You could tell they were reimagining Barbara Ann as a rocker. I like that. They sing a little bit, again, just I think to kind of help guide where they are in the song, that kind of thing. But that's really cool. We get two new studio stereo mixes of material from Lei'd in Hawaii. First up is California Girls. To me it sounds just like the version on Made in California. I don't know. I feel like they didn't do a whole lot of remixing at that point. Sorry about the traffic noise. Not only am I dropping things, but the traffic's going crazy outside. And the other one we have is God Only Knows, remixed into stereo. Again, the Lei'd in Hawaii version. I actually like the mix on here a lot better than the one on here. I think the vocals are stronger on the digital set. And wrapping things up, we have Surfer Girl, an alternate take from Lei'd in Hawaii. This is really interesting, and when I listened to this again to compile the notes for this video, this is one of the things that really stuck out to me. They rewrite some of the lyrics of Surfer Girl, things like, I used to take you everywhere I'd go, making it all past tense. Surfer Girl was one of the few oldies that was still in the concert set around this time, so I'm thinking that they were maybe considering turning it into a very nostalgic song, you know, I used to have a surfer girl, that kind of thing. Kind of reminds me of like Brian Wilson's, you know, she will always be my surfer girl, I think that song is called. You know, it's interesting ideas there, and they did keep Surfer Girl around for quite a while. One of the few songs that's basically stayed in the live set for at least most of their career. So, kind of a melancholy reimagining. And that does it for the second digital release. You can see there on the front, Sunshine Tomorrow 2, the studio sessions. So join me very soon. We'll talk about the set that actually started it all. We did it backwards. We'll talk about Sunshine tomorrow, and go out there and listen to Smiley Smile again for its anniversary. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.